to recover from the past year. We're not back to normal business yet. We're still dealing with the impact of an ongoing pandemic in schools. Our fourth area is Curriculum 2022. Again, COVID's had a huge impact on our ability to plan and develop for curriculum reform. Now, we not only need time to consider curriculum development, but recovery alongside this. It's not a quick fix intervention, but long-term, well thought out evidence-based plans need to be put in place to support our curriculum reform. So we're calling on you to support us in delaying the implementation of the curriculum reform to allow schools the time they need to plan and prepare for change, and to engage, most importantly, with the pupils and our school communities on our journey to our curriculum reform. It's something we just haven't had time to do yet. And our final key area is ALN reform. Additional learning needs bill has been put in place and we should be ready to go from this year. But again, schools have just not had the time they need to prepare for that change. We want Welsh Government to recognise the substantial need for investment and training to support schools to be ready for this. Alongside this, we want the role of the ALN Co to be recognised . We believe it's a vital role. So that's our manifesto in short. We hope you're going to support us with it. We hope you'll sign up to our pledge, and we hope that you're going to consider our ideas in your way forward as well. Thank you.
To allow candidates from Cardiff Central to set out their views on the important issues that we face in schools and give an insight into your vision for education if elected. Each candidate will have around 3 minutes to introduce themselves before we begin NAHT Cymru members' questions and questions from the virtual audience, should there be any. I'm going to propose that we start introductions and opening statements purely in the order that I can see you on screen. Taking that into account, I'd like to start with you, please, Wiliam Rees, Plaid Cymru candidate. Over to you, please, William.
Thank you very much. Shmai pawb, I'm Wiliam Rees and I'm Plaid Cymru's candidate for Cardiff Central. I moved to Cardiff 4 years ago for my studies and I've since settled here. I live in Cytays and I now work as a policy researcher and a digital communications officer. I'm very grateful to have the chance to come and speak to you all today. My dad was chair of governors of my secondary school, and through his close working with the senior management team at that school, I came to understand the immense pressure facing school leaders. I think it's fair to say I probably had a fair few more conversations about school funding and the challenges facing our education system at the dinner table growing up than your average child. I can also say that without the strong encouragement and inspiration from teachers and school leaders in my own experience, I for sure wouldn't be in a position here today talking to you as one of the youngest candidates across Wales and to lay out Plaid Cymru's positive and ambitious vision for education in Wales. We owe school teachers and leaders so much, and we need to so much thanks for the support that they have given to children across Wales during the pandemic. A Plaid Cymru government will look to boost the workforce, reduce class sizes and aid education recovery. As part of our goal to deliver the best start in life for every child, a Plaid Cymru government will extend free school meals to every child in primary school by the end of our first term, and we will employ 4,500 extra teachers and specialist support staff in schools across Wales by the end of our first term. We believe that by increasing staff numbers, we'll reduce those class sizes and ensure the workforce is in place to aid our education recovery aims and to alleviate and to elevate our educational landscape in Wales. We want to strengthen career pathways, increase teacher salaries, and we are unashamedly ambitious in our vision here. We will employ additional learning needs coordinators, and we will look to increase professional learning opportunities. It's for those reasons and many more that I was proud to be one of the first candidates, I believe, to sign up to the NAHT pledge a few weeks ago, to work with the profession, listening to and acting on the views of school leaders as the experts on education, and to put the needs of learners and the well-being of the whole school community at the heart of everything I do if I am elected next Thursday. I look forward to not only answering your questions today and discussing your manifesto asks, where I have to say there is a lot of agreement between your asks and Plaid Cymru policy, but also to having that dialogue with you and your members so that we can ensure ultimately that children across Cardiff and across Wales receive the very best education system that they all deserve. Diolch yn fawr.
Thank you very much, William, and thank you for starting us off this evening. If I can hand over now, please, to the Labour candidate, Jenny Rathbone. Over to you, please, Jenny.
Thank you very much. I'm very passionate about the well-being of children, so I look forward to discussing that further. I've been a school governor for over 20 years, including being parachuted into a school as to be its chair of governors, as both the governing body and the school itself had completely lost its way, and it took a great deal of time and effort to put it back on track to be a child-focused school. I've previously also for many years chaired a maternity services liaison committee for nearly a decade, and so I'm fully aware of the importance of good antenatal and postnatal support to ensure that there is good attachment between the mother and the child. And the consequences for schools when that does not occur are very challenging, I appreciate. I ran a Sure Start programme in a deprived part of London for about 7 years, and I set up an award-winning children's centre, which is still going, despite all the cuts from the Conservative government. As a member of the Children and Young People's Committee in the 4th Assembly, I was involved in a very important investigation into adoption and the support that is or isn't available to children and their parents after they have been adopted. And I'm also a regular attender at the CPG on Looked After Children. As I said, I am passionate about children. We're fully aware of the mental health challenges that children have to get to grips with as a result of the pandemic and the sacrifices they've had to make, and we clearly need to make it up to them. And I'm sure that Welsh Labour will be very child focused in the next 5 years.
Thank you very much, Jenny. Thank you for that. And I'd like to hand over now to Liberal Democrat candidate Heath Marshall. Heath?
Yes, hello, good evening. So Heath Marshall, I'm the candidate and representative of Cardiff West, the Liberal Democrats. I was raised in Cardiff. I have lived in various parts. I now live in Penarth, but I was raised in Riverside, Pontcanna. I am very passionate. First of all, I should say I'm a solicitor with more than 18 years of experience in commercial property. But I have a passion, genuine passion in education, particularly early years, and from the ages of 4 to 8. I have a son who is almost 7. It's been a very difficult time for children, including teenagers and also students in university. I would just first of all like to summarise some of the achievements that the Liberal Democrats have achieved to date through, of course, the coalition government and Kirsty Williams as the Education Minister. So I think it's fair to say that the Welsh Liberal Democrats' record shows that we are the true party of education. I'd also like to add that in opposition, we were the party that prioritised education spending in the budget negotiations, which secured the establishment of the Pupil Development Grant. As Education Minister, Kirsty Williams has implemented Welsh Liberal Democrat policies that have helped drive forward very positive reforms and turn around Wales' programme of international student assessment record. Now, just to summarise the key education manifesto pledges that the Liberal Democrats will make in the next government, we are, of course, providing free school meals throughout the school holidays for the most deprived students. We want to significantly invest in the programmes to tackle hunger, isolation and exclusion during school holidays. We want to embed the right to lifelong learning, and that's through the expansion of the personal learning accounts. And this is something that I feel quite strongly about. And obviously we want to end the digital exclusion, and at all levels of education, of course, supporting the development, strong digital skills and access to digital resources. Also, I'd like to point out the new Welsh school curriculum, which obviously is going to be implemented next year. And we want to take that forward as Welsh Liberal Democrats and to improve and expand on that. So I'd like to say that Wales is really on the path to transform the way that children learn with a new curriculum aimed to prepare its children and young children to thrive at school and beyond. And this new curriculum for Wales is future oriented and intends to create a better learning experience for students and to contribute to the overall improvement of Welsh education. And also I'd like to add that the co-construction process has succeeded in engaging many and in developing trust, while systematic adjustments in the institutions and other policies are helping set in motion a professionally led education. And just to finish off on achievements to date, the amount of investment that we have put into teachers and their ongoing education and improving on their skills and providing them with obviously more independence and power to make decisions in the workplace. These are just some of the achievements that the Welsh Liberal Democrats have achieved to date. And as I said, this is something that we want to build on and obviously improve on going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Heath, and thank you to all candidates for your opening statements. Some of you have already touched on some of the themes in our questions, but please feel free to expand your answers when called upon to do so. So the questions that we have prepared before this evening's event have come to us through NAHT Cymru members. They are either based on personal experiences or based on our NAHT Cymru manifesto. The first question, again, I should point out that all questions have been prepared in advance and not shared with the candidates. So candidates don't know the questions that we're going to ask. We will be putting them on the spot, but I'm sure they'll be prepared to answer our questions and answer them as openly and honestly as they can. I'd like to call, I'm going to go in reverse order this time. So I'm going to start with you, Heath, with the first question, and then I'll come to each candidate for their response. So obviously, there has been a lot of talk around COVID and the impact of COVID on schools. NAHT Cymru's position has been clear around COVID in that the terminology used around lost generation and catch-up we feel is extremely unhelpful. For our learners, they're on a COVID recovery journey. Recovery won't happen overnight. It isn't a quick fix. It isn't something that can be fixed with a couple of hours additional schooling. For each learner, they will have had a different experience during the pandemic, and they will need specific support tailored to their needs. We're very interested to hear from each of the candidates how you see COVID recovery happening in schools and your thoughts and feelings on that. And if I could start with you, Heath, please, on that question.
Yes, so it's a very good question, of course, and very important. I as a father of a 6.5-year-old son, it's been extremely difficult with professional parents and finding the time to maintain, education at the level that they were receiving before the pandemic. It's obviously going to be very difficult, and teachers obviously need to have time to deal with this and to make preparations. And I can understand the concerns that you have, and there's a lot in your manifesto that the Liberal Democrats agree with, and there's a lot of common ground. I think going forward, there is going to be lost time. Students are not going to be able to catch up that easily, but I think there has been a lot of investment and action taken, ensuring that the most deprived children have access to electronic devices and the ability to learn from home with access to tablets and computers. So it's not ideal, but I think that has been very helpful. And I think that is going to continue going forward. When children obviously continue to learn in school, they can then also access the benefits of digital learning as well through, through the hub, and also through lessons and homework being delivered electronically. So it's a case of working together and ensuring that the teachers have the time that they require to make the necessary preparations, particularly with the new school curriculum as well. I can understand the concerns that the union have, and although we do support that curriculum being implemented, obviously the concerns that the union have in terms of preparation time and what the teachers require to implement those necessary improvements have to be considered.
That's great. Thank you very much, Heath. And the same question to you now, please, Jenny.
There's no question that the attainment gap has widened, unfortunately, and that's hardly surprising. Obviously, the experience of some children who live in nice houses with gardens is very different from the child who's living in a small flat with no access to the outdoor play. And I think particularly for the families where domestic violence is present, it's obviously been an extremely traumatic experience. For many children, school is a safe haven, and not being able to be in school has been obviously very traumatic for lots of children, but even for those who have very child-focused families, have found it very difficult to relearn social relationships. So I think that is one of the most important things about COVID recovery, is the importance of learning through play, the importance of enabling children simply just to play. But in addition to that, Welsh Labour is committed to providing additional one-to-one support, whether it's for tutoring to enable children to catch up with their learning, or whether it's for counselling. There is a great deal more we need to do. We've committed in our manifesto to nearly 2,000 additional staff in schools, but in my view, we're probably going to need a great deal more than that. There's no question that we need to make it up to children for the sacrifices they've made, because they were never going to die of COVID. So I think that additional support during the school holidays through this summer, for example, to ensure that all children have some sort of trip out, whether it's to the seaside or to one of our wonderful mountains. But we do know that many children never go anywhere with their families, and many families will be outpriced because obviously many more people are going to be staying in Wales for their summer holidays, and unless we're going camping, it's unaffordable for many people to take their children away for the holidays. So we need to ensure that there is that support in schools over the summer. I would urge schools to be part of the SHEP programme, the school holiday food and fun, because at the moment we've only got 4 schools in my constituency who have signed up to SHEP in the past, and it would be great if there were many more, because we really do need to ensure that there is that support to enable children to relearn those social relationships.
Thank you, Jenny, and thank you very much for your comments there. Same question, please, now to you, please, William.
Yeah, agree with Jenny in terms of the importance of tackling that attainment gap. Children living in poverty, sadly, are often a few steps behind their peers in more well-off families. And so that is something that we would want to focus on that side. For instance, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, free school meals for initially all children from families on universal credit, and then expanding that to all children in primary schools. And then that will help them, hopefully, ensuring that no child is going to school hungry, because well, children who are hungry aren't going to do much learning, and so that can really help them there. On the other side, in terms of supporting the teachers and school leaders, we do support, Plaid Cymru do support the NAHT's call for no statutory curriculum for the next academic year, while schools concentrate on the post-COVID recovery and prepare for the implementation of the new curriculum. And throughout the pandemic, we have repeatedly called on the Welsh Government to listen to teachers to ensure that policies that are being enacted are the ones most appropriate to be enacted. We in government would recognise that recovery will be a long process with no one size fits all, and that's why we're looking at investing I think it's around £690 million over 5 years in education generally, but also in the short term, so to speak, laying out a 3-year budget for education funding to give school leaders then that security and ability to help plan a bit more long term than usual. We'll also invest in the profession to help retain good teachers and provide quality professional development to make sure that you're all equipped to provide the high quality teaching and learning that we all know that you want to give. And we also commit to making teaching a master's level profession, beginning with the requirement for all newly qualified teachers to be working towards a government funded master's degree in education or a subject relevant to their classroom work within 5 years. And then we'd also encourage practicing teachers to obtain the qualification through part-time study then to raise education across the board and help the recovery in the short, medium and long term.
Thank you very much, William. Thank you. I'm going to go on to another question now, which is kind of related to COVID recovery, only in the sense that it's become a topic that's been bandied around over the last few weeks in terms of catch-up, and that terrible phrase of catch-up. And this is around the school year. So there's been conversations for a significant number of years around whether or not the current school year is suitable, is appropriate, is the best for learners. I'm interested to hear from your party's perspective whether or not you would seek to look to change the school year, whether you would be for that, would be against that, and just generally your views on where we are with the current academic year. And I'm going to start with you first of all this time, Jenny, please.
Well, Welsh Labour in its manifesto is committed to exploring reform both of the school day and the school year to bring it more in line with contemporary patterns of family life and employment. So I think it would be very much a stakeholder consultation with teachers, head teachers, parents and children to work out what is the best for young people and also for those who teach them. Because we want to ensure that we retain our teachers in the profession rather than having them burn out and go off and do something else altogether. And I think there's a bit too much pressure on a lot of teachers. My daughter's a teacher, so I'm fully aware of the pressures that are on your profession. And we need to ensure that that it is manageable, but I think it's not a simple process because you as teachers may live in a different local authority to where you teach, and therefore it is quite important to have some sort of consistency in between local authorities rather than having different arrangements. So I think the commitment is there to look at this subject and to explore with you how we could manage our buildings and our resources collectively better for the outcome of children.
Thank you, Jenny. Same question to you, please, William.
Yeah, very much in agreement with Jenny, really. I think a whole host of things we've seen over the past year, not just with education, has shown that possibly things aren't working as best as they can be. But in the medium and long term, if we're going to be exploring this, Plaid Cymru would of course be looking to work with stakeholders such as yourselves, because you're the ones who are delivering the education on the front line and would know what's best for pupils.
Thank you, William. The same question, excuse me, to you, please, Heath. Oh, you're on mute. Sorry, Heath.
Hello. Yes, so similarly, the Liberal Democrats are interested in working in a social partnership with the stakeholders. So we want to explore that. We want to work with the educational workforce unions and others to consider if school term dates should be reformed. So maintaining the same amount of school holidays, of course, would be something that we want to maintain. So we'd only consider that and make changes if they were fully supported by the leaders and the profession. And as I said, this is about working in social partnership with stakeholder consultation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I just should mention, if anybody would like to raise their hand or wanted to ask a question of the candidates, please feel free to do so, or pose the question in the chat function. I'm going to move us on a little bit now to the issue of the middle tier, so the education consortia that sit between Welsh Government and local authorities, and the sizable bureaucratic process that sits around that. So if you had an opportunity to see NAHT Cymru's manifesto, we're calling for candidates to support a review of the middle tier to ensure that they offer the value for money that they propose that they do. We're very keen to know what your position is on the middle tier and whether or not you would support a review, given that we are in a very difficult financial period. We know that schools have suffered from years of underfunding. We know that there has been significant challenges, and we know that those challenges are set to continue, particularly with COVID recovery. So as far as we're concerned, we need to make sure that the money that's spent in education is spent in the right way. So we'd like to know whether or not you would support that review of the middle tier. And I'm going to start with you, William, first, please.
Yes, agree with you there completely. Plaid Cymru will want to streamline and review the so-called middle tier between schools and Welsh Government, including local authorities, education consortia, as you mentioned, universities, Estyn, WJC and Qualifications Wales, because there's a lot going on there, and ultimately unnecessary bureaucracy is going to, well, it is disrupting what teachers are there to do, which is to teach. And so we'd want to bear down on that unnecessary administration and bureaucracy, and well, allowing you really to produce more effective use of your resources.
That's great. Thank you very much, William. And the same question to you, please, Heath.
Yes, so the Liberal Democrats, I would like to first of all say that they are supportive of the regional consortia. I think there needs to be more regional collaboration. We also appreciate that there has to be a review, and we support that. There has to be a review of what's been invested and what schools are benefiting the most, and what can be done to improve on those that are not supported and improving sufficiently. So we'd work, obviously each consortia works differently, so from that perspective a review is good, and it's also an opportunity to find out and share best practice. So overall, yes, we are supportive of those intentions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the same question to you, please, Jenny.
Clearly there should be no intention to set people up to fail. We've got this revolutionary new exciting curriculum, and we need to ensure that all teachers feel confident to grasp the opportunity to seize their pedagogy, really, to teach the pupils they have in front of them in the most appropriate way that's going to capture their imagination. But I appreciate that it needs quite a lot of training rethink the way we do things. Possibly not so much for primary school, because the curriculum is delivered by led by one teacher in each classroom. But in secondary school, I think it does require some reassurance of some of the specialist subject teachers that they're not in some way going to be pushed to one side just because they're not the subject area that's going to be the one we're going to be tracking the progress of pupils on. So I don't have a fixed view on this, and I don't think that Welsh Labour does either. I think we really do need to work with our stakeholders, particularly yourselves in the profession, to ensure that what we're going to be doing is in the best interest of children and staff, and to ensure that we have a seamless transfer as far as the children are concerned into the new exciting curriculum. But I'd like to pay tribute to Melior Rowlands, because I think his last report really did capture the excellent work that had been done by schools in adapting to the online learning, and also safeguarding the well-being of the pupils in your schools. So I think we need to not lose sight of the work that has been going on constantly throughout the pandemic, and we need to build on doing things differently, but also have enough space in people's lives to enable them to recover from what has been a very demanding period.
Thank you very much, Jenny. Thank you. And thank you, candidates, for your answers. I'm very pleased to welcome Calum to the call. Hello, Calum.
Hi there. I'm sorry. I was led to believe it was on at 6 o'clock, so I'm so sorry I'm late.
No problem, and we admire your honesty, Calum, for not pretending that you had the get out IT problems. So we really appreciate you taking the time to join us this afternoon, and I'm sure we'll be able to catch you up with some of the questions that we've asked going forward. So thank you very much. So we're going to move on now to another question, and I think some of the candidates, you've already touched on it with your answers. In the NAHT Cymru manifesto, we talk about the passion and the drive that our members have for the new curriculum. We've been part of the conversation for a number of years. Our members have been in pioneer schools. Our members are geared up to, excited, passionate about this new challenge and this new opportunity that they feel is right for their learners. We were promised an inspection-free year by Estyn to allow schools to develop the new curriculum. We had that inspection-free year. Unfortunately, that inspection-free year was taken over by COVID, and schools were thrown into dealing with the COVID pandemic, and are now trying to deal with COVID recovery. The ambition of our members to succeed with the new curriculum hasn't changed. We're still there, we're still passionate, we still want to do it, but we question whether now is the time to roll out such an ambitious programme, given that we have additional learning needs reform and now COVID recovery to deal with. Very keen to hear what candidates have got to say around our cause to put a pause on the rollout of the new curriculum, not to stop the new curriculum, not to disband it, not to do away with the new curriculum, but to allow schools an opportunity to prepare properly so that they are set up to succeed, not set up to fail. So I'm going to ask you, Heath, first of all, please, what do you think about our cause to pause the new curriculum, given the existing pressures on schools at the moment?
First, I do appreciate the existing pressures and the concerns that you have. There's been a lot of work involved with this new curriculum, of course, and it's something that the Liberal Democrats feel very strongly about, and do not wish to see the, in principle, don't want to see the delay to the implementation of that particular curriculum. So it's not something. I can understand your concerns, but it's this is something that I think that children need to start with, in line with the proposals, and I think that a delay would not necessarily achieve or be in the best interests of the children going forward. But it's not necessarily something that I would not consider. And it's the Liberal Democrats are open-minded, and if there are concerns, we'll listen to the stakeholders and the teachers and what concerns they have. And it depends on whether that can be implemented and what sort of delay. So it's that's our position, and so I hope that answers your question.
Thank you very much, Heath. And we're going to come to you next, Calum. So just keep your answers as brief as possible, but we're really keen to hear, your point of view.
Well, firstly, again, sorry for being late. As head teachers, imagine you're furious and you want to send me to some kind of detention facility now. But when it comes to the implementation of the curriculum, we agree that there should be a delay to the bill, to the implementation of the curriculum until September 2023. I'm not sure if you've spoken about this already with inspections, in the same way that we've kind of agreed with what NAHT has said about inspections, that it's just simply not fair to do it right now. If you think about it, the fact that it's not fair for teachers in the sense that they've got a massive backlog to get through, they're having to adjust the new ways of working, stop starts as well with going back to physical learning as well. I don't think it would be fair right now, so we would want to delay its implementation. And we tried to actually do that, I believe, in an amendment to the bill, which was sadly rejected. And of course, if it's not fair on the teachers, it's also not fair on the pupils either, because then you won't get the curriculum taught in the way that it's supposed to be taught. So I'm with you guys on that one.
Thank you very much, Calum. And the same question to you, please, William.
Yes, well, as I mentioned in one of my previous answers, Plaid Cymru's position is for no statutory curriculum for the next academic year, while schools concentrate on post-COVID recovery and prepare for the new implementation of the new curriculum. Beyond that, of course, if it's deemed circumstances have changed even further, we would look to work with stakeholders on that. But we do recognise that the pandemic has had major impact on schools' abilities to prepare and develop for this new curriculum, which is why we want to ensure that teachers have the time and resources they need to prepare and access professional development to implement the curriculum effectively. We'll also want to conduct a review of the initial teacher education and continuing professional development to identify the way in which we need to adapt to the needs of this new curriculum. On the issue of inspections, as both you and then in your question and Calum referred to in his answer, Plaid Cymru do also support another inspection-free year for schools to prepare for the new curriculum, and then also allowing to focus on the post-COVID recovery as well. And more generally, feeding into the theme I referred to in terms of the wanting to cut down on the bureaucracy and unnecessary administration. More generally, when it comes to inspections, we would support a truly independent inspection review body to ensure there's proportionate, reliable and fair inspection process for schools and parents can have confidence in. And we would support then increased government trust in teachers with fewer inspections. Again, to say, as I said earlier, to let teachers teach.
Thank you, William. And the same question to you, please, Jenny.
I think of it like the Liberal Democrats. I'm a little bit resistant to deferring the introduction of the new curriculum, because I think it has just such promising prospects for young people. But I think it sounds perfectly reasonable to defer inspections for a further year, whilst we can all agree that the system is going to require time to be embedded. We need to ensure that our consortia, as well as our local authorities, are working hard to share best practice, to support teachers to understand the strengths and the possibilities, the opportunities provided by the new curriculum, and the new ways, the liberation that it's going to give to teachers, not having to simply teach the test, which is completely ghastly. At the end of the day, it doesn't really do Wales much good to have people who can simply repeat things by rote. So I want to ensure that schools are collaborating rather than competing, and supporting each other to have a successful rollout of the curriculum. I'm afraid I'm simply not mandated to say we're going to be able to simply defer the curriculum by a year. I don't think that is going to be Welsh Labour's position.
Thank you, Jenny, and thank you everyone for your answers. I'm going to turn now to a long-standing campaign of NAHT Cymru, and that's fair funding for schools. It's been our campaign. You will have seen our campaign demonstrations on the steps of the Senedd. You will know that we have continually called for fair funding for schools. We know, thanks to a recent report published by the Welsh Government, or commissioned by the Welsh Government and put together by Luke Sibieta of the Institute of Fiscal Studies, that there is a postcode lottery when it comes to school funding. There are way too many methods by which schools receive funding. No two local authorities are the same, and the results are huge differentials in the number of the amount of money allocated per pupil. We as a union would like to see the next government commit to a funding review of schools, a whole-scale funding review, to do away with the inconsistencies that we see across Wales, to do away with any kind of postcode lottery of it depends where you live, it depends which local authority area you live in. We would want to see a fairly funded school formula across Wales, and we'd like to know if that's something that you would support. And we're going to start with you, Calum, please.
Sure. Well, the Welsh Conservatives have long had a gripe about the per pupil funding gap between England and Wales. It's you get different amounts depending on what if you consult different studies. I believe at the number I've been led to believe at the moment is nearly £1,000, and between England and Wales. And we definitely want to address that. You can't spend all this time complaining about it and then not try to address it, definitely. And so we want to increase school funding, and that's using some of the additional money that we've had to deal with COVID as well, because that makes sense as well. It should go into something like education, since it's supposed to be COVID recovery money. So that will be used. We also want to have properly look at school funding formulas as well. It's too complex at the moment, so we want to level up so there's better parity, and that's also particularly for children with ALN as well. I mean, earlier today I was in the Vale of Glamorgan, and I know for years they've, compared to Cardiff where I'm standing, they've not had a good deal. So, and we want everyone in Wales to have a good deal. That's kind of the point. We also will retain the pupil deprivation grant as well, so that, don't worry, that's not going to go anywhere. And so you've got our commitments to ensuring that we increase school funding in that way.
Thank you, Calum. The same question to you, please, Heath.
So the Liberal Democrats acknowledge that the current funding formula is too complex. So as Education Minister Kirsty Williams has repeatedly acknowledged that. So that's one of the reasons why she recommended that she commissioned, the coalition government commissioned the Luke Sibieta to undertake the independent review. So those recommendations are something that the Liberal Democrats want to support and to carry out. So we want to make further proposals on how schools can be funded in a fair manner. So that is something that it's very much acknowledged by the Liberal Democrats, and that's something that we want to pursue. Thank you.
Thank you, Heath. Thank you. And the same question to you, please, Jenny.
Well, this is a trick question to some extent, because it's all about where decisions should be made. That local authorities have a democratic decision-making process, and I appreciate that many Conservative-led local authorities have chosen not to invest in schools and put the money into something else. That certainly isn't the case in Cardiff, and this is a Cardiff Central hosting. So I'm very proud of what Cardiff Council has done to prioritise investing in education. I can appreciate it causes huge problems for teachers and head teachers who are endeavouring to provide a quality education in other local authorities who provide less funding. But it really does come down to, are we going to simply withdraw the role of local authorities from being able to decide how their budgets are apportioned. I think that's you know, the Williams report was examined quite a lot of the differentials between different local authorities, and clearly questions need to be asked as to why some local authorities do not think that children are a priority. But that's certainly not the case with Cardiff. Clearly, it's very easy for opposition parties to say we're going to put more money in this and more money in that. The brutal fact is that we face an extremely challenging situation at the moment. The UK government is doing its best to claw back money off Wales, and as you're all aware, there's going to be a massive jobs crisis as well as the climate crisis that we're going to have to deal with. So I'm not sure it's possible at this stage to be talking about how much additional money we need to put into schools. But I certainly think that children should be our priority, and I will certainly be campaigning for that.
Thank you, Jenny. And the same question to you, please, William.
Yes, thank you. Well, Plaid Cymru recognise that education in Wales sadly does continue to suffer from a funding crisis under the current government. Our manifesto is independently costed, and we have the aim to invest, as I've previously referred to, £690 million in education over 5 years. And we promise to invest in education and bring an end to the postcode lottery of school funding that you referred to in your initial question. Also, as I've said, we will deliver a 3-year budget for education so that schools and further education settings can better plan and utilise their resources. And we'll want to make sure that funding reaches the front line in an effective and timely manner, moving away from specific grants and last-minute allocations. And that extra funding then we have allocated will allow schools hopefully to create more capacity for curriculum development and special projects. And I also note that in your manifesto, you're calling for a commitment by politicians to use political influence within their own parties at Westminster as well. And I can guarantee that Plaid Cymru MPs in Westminster will continue to work tirelessly to ensure that devolved budgets then reflect the needs of Wales. However, given I am the Plaid Cymru candidate, you wouldn't be surprised to hear me say we also recognise that we think the Westminster government and the institution of Westminster itself does not care for or work for Wales. And so we would believe that independence is the only way to that we can thrive and prosper as a nation.
Thank you very much, William, and thank you to all the candidates. Unfortunately, that brings us to the end of our question and answer session. I'd like to very quickly hand back to our NAHT Cymru President, Karina Hansen, for any closing remarks. Karina.
Thank you. Thank you. Really interesting to listen to each of your answers to those questions. I just want to pick up one point perhaps about funding that was there. But we're not necessarily asking for more money in education. We're asking for fair funding. So there is a disparity across Wales in the amount of money that schools are getting. And you know that there's also an issue. There's definitely an issue. We're a small country with not a massive population and a huge amount of bureaucracy, which is why we want the middle tier looked at. You know, there are considerations that need to be made. We can't just keep going on the way we're going and expect a fantastic new curriculum. We're all on board with that. We're excited about it and we want to do the best for our children. But we're not convinced at the moment that the money is going directly to children. We believe there's an awful lot of waste in the system at the moment, and that really does need looking at. So we're not necessarily, we all understand the pressures on budgets, we get that, but that is no reason to be looking as a nation really in Wales at the systems that we've got in place to ensure that, you know, funding is going to the right places for the right reasons for children. And that kind of brings me on to the point that some of you were raising around changes to the school year and extending the school day and all of those sorts of things. None of this can be done without additional funding to ensure it happens. You know, it can't, again, it's in our manifesto. You know, the needs of children can't all be met by the current system that's in place. If we want to do a bit more, I know you mentioned there about, you know, school holidays and, you know, additional things going on in those times for the children that need it. And I totally agree with that. But again, it's something that needs funding, isn't it? So if we're going to look at a system and make it fair, we're just calling for that review. It's not, we're not saying we want more money, we're not shouting like at the top of the trees for it, but it is really just to make sure that we have a really good and clear picture of where the money is being spent in the system to ensure that it's going directly to the children and to their educational needs, which is what we're calling for. So anyway, that's just a few comments from me, thinking about what you've answered in the question. So thank you for talking to us, and thank you to those of you that have signed up to our pledge. We're really grateful for that, and we hope we can continue to work with yourselves as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Karina. And that just brings me to the official bit to say thank you very much on behalf of NAHT Cymru and its members. We really appreciate all candidates taking the time out to speak to us this evening. We wish you all the very best of luck for the election. We hope it stops raining for you to continue your campaigning throughout the rest of this week. And we look forward to working with the successful candidate. Thank you very much for joining us. Goodbye.
Diolch yn fawr.
Thank you.
Bye.